The 76ers last night picked up a win over the Brooklyn Nets in overtime. And in a game that I will point out, because I am a resident Ben Simmons hater here at Fox Sports Radio,
Sure is.
that they won without Ben Simmons. And not only can I say that the Sixers won without Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid had arguably his best game of the 2019-2020 NBA season. And what last night showed me, Jonas, is the process as we know it. We had Rick Bucher on, I believe, recently, and we asked him who's to blame for what's going on with the Sixers. And his comment was actually Sam Presti, the guy who ends up starting what the process is. And the process seems to have come to, I think, Jonas, a completion, because there are more and more reports out now that the Sixers likely or could be moving one of the two. And in fact, a report that polled some NBA executives, this from ESPN, saying that, quote, this from Tim Bontemps of ESPN, there was no consensus, but league execs think that if the Sixers do explore a trade, Embiid is more likely to be moved, health being the determining factor in building around Simmons. And that, I don't think, is much of a surprise from what we've heard as of late, but it says a lot. And what I think last night said a lot was, my whole thing with Ben Simmons is I've just always felt that Joel Embiid was just such an extremely superior basketball player, and we're putting them on the same level. And we're putting them on the same level in this. We are talking about trading a guy who is a number one to keep a perceived number one who's a really number two. And it seems like they can't coexist. And last night, to me, was the perfect example of why they can't coexist. Joel Embiid, who's complained throughout the season and has got people on his back, has made comments about him standing up by the three-point line. Last night, 39 points, 16 rebounds without Ben Simmons. The fractures, the tension, everything that we perceive to be there, I think is, and I think last night's performance showed it.
Doug Gottlieb has said on this show and other shows on Fox Sports Radio that Joel Embiid might be the most skilled player in the league, in the world. And he's got a legitimate argument. When you look at just what he's able to do at his side, he can handle the ball, he can shoot. You can put him at the foul line late in games. He's gonna hit his free throws. He plays defense. Like, he's that good. But the injuries are a concern. And if you were to just look in that and look long-term, you would say, okay, it makes the most sense trading away Joel Embiid as opposed to Ben Simmons. My biggest issue with Simmons, and maybe it's not an issue, but you just hear enough talk and enough people have conversations, and there's always been a little diva aspect to Ben Simmons. It's always been there. You know, when you see other players around the league that have an issue shooting but improve and put the work in to become a better shooter, whether it's Lonzo Ball or any of these other guys that have struggled from behind the arc or have struggled with their jump shot, like, Ben Simmons just either hasn't or just doesn't want to implement it in games, which is weird. And I don't know if it's just he prefers to be a stat stuffer elsewhere as opposed to take shots from the outside, but there is this weird dynamic there. And look, what team last year in the NBA could you describe as talented but dysfunctional and ultimately came up short of their goal?
It's 76ers?
Well, the Boston Celtics, right? Okay. As far as like just,
I'm the worst at Jonas's quizzes.
But I'm just, and I didn't mean to throw you on the spot there, but it was more. You see, last year the Celtics had all this talent and all these players, and it just never felt right, and it always seemed a little off. And even this year, Al Horford, who's the common denominator between last year's Celtics team and this year's Sixers team, said, and maybe wasn't trying to be this honest, but said, we got locker room issues. They're never going to get to their ultimate goal, A, because they're not as good as Milwaukee, but B, I don't know if they like each other. And that's the biggest issue in Philly.
And that could go two ways, and I'll take it that way. The part of the process, and which goes around the entire NBA, of tanking and teams trying to get the top picks, so much so they changed the lottery. They probably should have done more drastic changes, but the point is that the NBA realized, all right, teams are tanking here. We've got to do something about it. The Philadelphia 76ers were the poster child of tanking. And you look at the other options or the other places where this went on, the Lakers, for example, with their top picks, the Sixers actually hit on their guys.
Yes.
Now Embiid fell to them because of injury issues, but when you look at it, They could have had Jabari Parker or Andrew Wiggins, and instead they get Joel Embiid. Now you look back, I'm sure the Bucks and Cavaliers, Timberwolves, however you want to do it, would end up doing and saying, all right, we take Joel Embiid. We'd rather have Joel Embiid at that point. But it also shows you at how difficult it is, because not only are you taking guys in consecutive drafts with high picks, they are high picks for a reason, and they have what you mentioned, an ego. There's something about them. The media is fawning over Ben Simmons when his own coach can't even get him to shoot threes in a game, something that his coach has asked him to do. Joel Embiid has said, I got to stand out on the three-point line because this guy does it. The most telling stat last night for me was that Joel Embiid, who has attempted a three in every game he's played this season, attempted one last night. That was it. That's all he attempted. There were only 5 other games this season where he's attempted 1 3, and he did it with Ben Simmons on the court. You know who else was on the court? DeAndre Jordan. So you're talking about NBA going small. Here's a team with an actual center, and Joel Embiid went at him and had 39 and 16. Like, that tells me everything I need to know about the Philadelphia 76ers.
The Phillies got the best home record in the league, and that's impressive. They're 26-2 at home. And to me, when you're at home and you're sleeping in your own bed and it's your own, environment and all that, like that tells me, okay, that's a talented team. They have the same road record as the Knicks. And the Knicks are the laughingstock of the league. That tells me when they get out from their own environment and they've got to be around each other more, they don't like each other. Like they're honest to God, the Sacramento Kings have a better road record than the Sixers. Like it's just the splits. If you look at their defensive efficiency, they're one of the better defensive teams in the NBA at home. And then they get on the road and it's like they do a complete 180 and they turn into this other team. That tells me no matter what talent there is on the floor and how much, and you can stack them up against Milwaukee, and it's very comparable as far as talented players in the Eastern Conference, but there's a reason they're at where they're at, and there's a reason they struggle in road environments. When you got to be around each other, when you got to travel with each other, like everybody knows this. There are certain friends that you have that, hey, they're good friends, and then there's certain friends that you can be around on a road trip with or vacation with, and you don't know that until you get around them. You see all their idiosyncrasies, all the little stuff that annoys you. I don't think these guys like each other. I don't think it's it's a locker room that gets along all that well, or maybe it's just one player like it was last year in Boston, but I don't see it working, man.
Yeah, and I don't either. And it's amazing when you hear the report that we mentioned about the executives taking Joel Embiid's injury history as being a reason. I mean, imagine giving Ben Simmons more power.
I know.
I mean, like, because right now he's not doing what his coach had asked him to do this season. There's how many articles do we see of him trying to get back with Kendall Jenner and trying to do this and that? There's never.
Well, that's understandable. His eyes work, Dan.
You know what?
What do you want?
You know what I've never seen? I've never seen a video of Ben Simmons 2 hours after a game shooting threes in an arena. Never, not once. I've never seen it 2 hours before a game of Ben Simmons doing that and doing work by himself.
They don't have basketball hoops at Mastro Steakhouse, Dan.
That's fair enough. They don't have them in the club. Yeah,
everybody knows that.
They don't have them at the Clevelander, right? How was that? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
The Clevelander?
Yeah.
Well, I guess somebody asked me for blow.
Oh, not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad.
So I obliged.
I just find it amazing that the Sixers, and it shows that the process is going to end up being a failure. You're not going to have a title. I don't know if you'll get a conference finals appearance out of this, but it's coming to an end, and it's coming to an end soon. And what's even more amazing to me is that, listen, Joel Embiid's not perfect, but there's enough of his game there that if you're the 76ers, I mean, there aren't a lot of guys in the NBA who can do what he can do.
Yeah.
And I know there aren't a lot of guys that are 6'10", that play the point guard position, but Ben Simmons really isn't a point guard. He doesn't shoot the ball. He can really only go one way, and he gets a majority of his points in dunks. That's what it is, yet that somehow wins over someone who is uber talented in Joel Embiid because of an injury history sort of thing. The number 2 ends up getting to stay in Philadelphia, and that's amazing.
I would love to hear Jimmy Butler's thoughts on what Philadelphia was like. I would love to hear, if you were to ask him, because I'll be willing to bet anything right now. If you were to ask Jimmy Butler, who do you ride with, Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid? He would say Embiid.
Yeah,
guaranteed.
I think so.
I just think a lot of people are rubbed the wrong way by Ben Simmons, and that's why more people favor Joel Embiid despite the health concerns moving forward.
And you saw it with the Instagram post when Joel Embiid became the villain and Jimmy Butler chimes in.